Okay, I'm having to do this presentation a little different. I usually try to present it on the TV, but the last time I did that, you couldn't see the words. So I'm just going to speak as I go along with this Prezi. This is my literature-based thematic center. For it, I chose to do science in the first grade. So for this one, the guiding question for the whole thing is, how do we encounter science daily? I'm going to cover 3 different topics. The first topic that I chose was force and motion. To tie that into what they should already know, goes back to their kindergarten objective where they're supposed to compare the relative position of various objects observed in the classroom and outside, using positioning words such as in front of, behind, between, on top of, above, under, below, and beside. So in the next couple of slides, you'll see where we tie that in. But for this standard, the essential standard of force and motion, they want them to understand how forces, push or pulls, affect the motion of the object. So by the end of the lesson, they want students to know a force is a push or pull and understand it can make an object either go faster, slower, or change directions. Also, students should know a force is needed to start objects to move. They can keep them moving, or they can stop objects from moving. So to tie this back in, first you want to explain what a force is. So a force is a push or a pull on an object. But you can tie it in by saying, like, when you kick a ball, if you kick from behind it, then it's going to make it go forward. Other examples, pushing a table forward or stepping on a can, you're showing that you're forcing, the force is actually demonstrating the motion. By stepping on a can, you're forcing it down. So again, the motion is the change in position compared to a place or an object that is not moving. So I included 2 little pictures, the push and pull, and then the picture of someone kicking a football. So kicking behind it is going to make it go forward. In the learning activity, you can have students push toy cars. You can get them to push them on their desk or in the floor and explain that the force that they're using to push it behind the car is what's making it go forward. So the effect of force on an object makes it go forward. The instructional strategy, this was a book that I found. It's called Motion, which is push or pull, fast and slow. This is a good book to incorporate into it because it actually shows force by the push and pull, but also how much they push or pull can determine how fast or slow something goes. So that would be a good book to incorporate into this lesson. The closure for this lesson, you can explain to students that every day we use force and motion without realizing it. So just explain to them that opening a door or pulling out a chair or even closing a book is an example of how we use force, and that it always results in motion. The instructional strategy for closure. This was another book. I kind of was torn between using it and the one before, but this one actually has hands-on activities that you can use to help tie into the lessons. It's always important to have interactive lesson plan, because the more that you have children's interacting with the lesson, the more likely they're going to remember it. So this is a cool little book that you could incorporate into it. Okay, so the next part of that lesson plan would be the differentiation. I chose EC on this one. You could just show them a video. It's a force and motion video. It's just kind of simplified, something that they can watch.
The merry-go-round goes around in a circle.
Just something simple for somebody that's exceptionally challenged. Okay. So the next part of this lesson would be, the second lesson plan would be Earth systems, structures, and processes. So this was one that I had a little problem trying to tie it back into, because the previous lesson, the standard, was weather patterns from season to season. The only thing that I could think of incorporating it is like rain and snow being a material of Earth, the water. But anyways, for this standard, they are to understand the physical properties of Earth materials that make them useful in different ways. So by the end of this lesson, they want students to know earth materials include solid rock, soil, and water, which all have different observable properties. Students should know that earth materials retain their shape regardless of the container. If they don't change, they're considered a solid. If they do change to the shape of the container, they're considered a liquid. And also students know that earth materials have different properties that sustain plant and animal life and make them useful in solving human problems. So the instructional strategy would just first and foremost describe what earth materials are. So you'd have rocks, minerals, soil, and water. For this lesson plan, I decided to focus on rocks. So for the first learning activity, give students a rock and a magnifying glass and have them describe features and details of their rock. They can say whether it's smooth or rough, if it's big or small, how heavy it is, or if it's light. Just have them describe it and write what their features are and even draw a picture if they want to. The differentiation for this one I chose was the AIG student. To get a little bit more creative so they don't become bored with the lesson is to have them create their own illustration of a pet rock, and they can name it, say what its favorite game is, favorite food. Just get a little creative with it so they won't become bored with the lesson. The instructional strategy would be using this book, Let's Go Rock Collecting. This was a neat little book that helps describe the different types of rocks, and it also helps to describe how we see them in day-to-day life. One example is like diamond rings. You can actually form a diamond out of a rock, and also to let them know that rocks can make up roads and walkways. So it's a neat little book. Another book that you could use for closure, which helps kind of go into the next part of that lesson, would be Rocks and Minerals. This one is actually pretty bright and engaging, but it helps explain how rocks and minerals are transformed into usable materials. So you could help tie that into the next lesson with that book. And then for the instructional strategy for closure, have students explain what they know about rocks at the end. This way they tie all the points that you've been over in the lesson into one thing and then put it up on the bulletin board so they can see it on a day-to-day basis and always have it fresh in their head as they see it every day. The last lesson plan would be for structures and functions of living organisms. That was the standard for kindergarten. It kind of ties more into molecular biology in first grade. So for that one, tying it back in, you can compare different types of animals of the same animal to determine individual differences with a particular type of animal. The standard for first grade would be summarize the needs of living organisms for energy and growth. So by the end of this, they want students to know that animals are living things that grow and have basic needs for energy, air, and water. Students need to know animals depend on plants to provide them with energy directly and take in plants or other animals as an energy source. So this was a neat little lesson plan that I found online. It's called Why Do Woodpeckers Peck Wood? I provided the link to it, but it helps to explain how and why animals need food, and it takes them on a little journey and explains different animals and what they eat. The learning activity is you could take a bird feeder outside and hang it outside the classroom window and let them observe birds eating food. The differentiation for this one was the English language learners, because it's a simplified dialogue as well as having English subtitles. It helps to describe what animals eat and what they are classified as. Okay, and the instructional strategy, this is a little bit more of a detailed book on woodpeckers. So this would be a good one to read to the class out loud and then have them discuss the importance of woodpeckers pecking on trees. And then ask them if they've ever seen a woodpecker or if they've even ever heard one. The closure for this would be take the students on a walk outside, on a nature walk, and try to find animals looking for food. And if you happen to have a creek or a pond nearby, explain that water is also very beneficial for animals and essential for their growth and energy. And the instructional strategy for closure, have this worksheet, and they can try to identify what each animal eats. And at the very end, it allows them to draw what they think a sheep eats. So that was my lesson plan, my 3 lesson plans for science in the 1st grade. Hope you liked it. Enjoy. Thank you.